What's up, everyone? It's your host, Jonah. Welcome back to the Blue Collar Enlightenment Show. And if you're new, thanks for tuning in. Smash that follow button so you don't miss any new content.
Hey, everybody. It's your co-host, T. Today, we have Gina Mitchell. If you haven't listened to Sam's episode, go back and give it a listen. Gina is the mother of Sam Mitchell, the president of Autism Rocks and Rolls, along with being a teacher. Today, we are talking about autism from a mother's view. Miss Mitchell, thank you for coming back on the show. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me today. I'm really excited to be here.
We're excited to be doing this episode. We've been looking forward to it for a minute now, ever since we recorded with Sam.
I know. All her enthusiasm about getting her own show.
So what's new with you guys? What have y'all been up to?
Yeah, we've been really, really busy. So like you said, I'm a teacher, so I am on summer break right now. I teach 8th grade language arts middle school. So I'm on summer break, but it's not I don't get any rest or anything. We're really, really busy. It actually gives me more time to work on other stuff. But yeah, with Autism Rocks and Rolls Corporation and the podcast, Sam's been really busy with the podcast. We had comedian Judy Gold on yesterday. She is she's on True TV, World's Dumbest, and she's a comedian. She's hysterical. But we had her on yesterday. That dropped today. So that's already getting lots of hits. So that's really cool. But that was neat. We have Daniel Pewter coming up. He's an MMA fighter. We have, Forbes Riley, who is like a billionaire entrepreneur. She's a mental health advocate. So we have her coming up. So we have Chef Andre Rush, who is the White House chef. And he's a huge bodybuilder. He's a mental health advocate as well. So we have a lot of cool things coming up. That's what Sam and I were just working on, was realigning his season 2. But so the podcast is going great. The corporation's going great too. We've been traveling a lot. Sam is a motivational speaker. So we just got back in the last month, we've been to Canada, and he spoke at a special education assistive technology conference. And then we just got back from Orlando about a week ago. We were there for 6 days at Podfest. And he was a speaker there.
How did that go?
That was overwhelming. We had to come home and decompress for a day or two and then dive into what we learned. I attended a bunch of stuff on building your YouTube channel. So now I'm like geared up, ready to go with that. We met with the book publisher. So the books that we're writing, that's like a reality now. So we have a lot. We have a lot going on. And I told him he's wearing his mama out.
Isn't that what kids are good for, though?
Yes. Yeah. He's wearing me out, but it's a good wore out. So
yes. So proud.
How much fun did y'all have in Orlando with that?
We had a lot of fun. It's worth going to. I know it's, for us, a lot of times when you do motivational speaking, you get paid about half the time. But if they will pay for for Sam, our requirement now, just because he's gotten invited more places, we ask that people pay for his hotel and our travel. But then sometimes he'll waive the speaking fee, especially if it's a really good fit. But it was really good experience. If any podcaster ever has a chance to go to kind of a big pod movement or Podfest like that, I would highly recommend it. It's very overwhelming. You learn so much. And then when you come home, you're like, how am I going to incorporate all of this? And then you don't, because there's too much. So we had, Sam and I have met with the board, and we've met with just us and just tried to outline what did we really take from it and what's 3 or 4 things that we're going to incorporate into the podcast and into the corporation. So you have to make it manageable, but we're going back next year. It was a really good experience.
That's the beauty of podcasting, is that there's so many ways to do it. There's no set book of how to podcast. Mm-hmm. And I do those live Twitter spaces, and Sam has come in a couple of times, and it's awesome when he does. But we have bigger podcasters come in and answer questions and help us along because we're still, pretty new in our podcasting career. So having those guys giving knowledge out is awesome, and being able just to take a little bit from here and there and implement it into your podcast to try to make it better. You don't want to make big jumps to change your podcast, just subtle little changes to make habits form.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I got home and I kind of was stressed about it. It was a good experience, but I actually emailed our board of directors, because they're kind of everywhere. One of them is in Arizona, and then the rest are kind of local. But I just sent out this general email to the board that said, I'm feeling overwhelmed. We all have jobs, and I know that we can't just spend 40 hours a week on this, but I don't know I don't know what direction to go into. So our vice president, he's a media specialist. His name's Ryan Bruce. He's out in Arizona. But he emailed me back, and bless his heart, he was like, okay, you need to make a chart and prioritize things. What needs to be done first, second, third, before anything else can be done? So I took everything that we have going on and I prioritized it, and it helped. It helped a lot. On the top of the list was kind of to revamp Sam's studio because it needs to happen. And so we actually had a friend come over today, and we looked at him and said, just what do we need? Like, what do we need to make this look like a studio and not like a spare bedroom, which is what it is.
That's what we're in the middle of as well. If you can tell from the background of the Zoom, we actually moved areas. And so we're in the process of
trying to figure out.
Yeah, we're taking the biggest room we have in the house, and we're going to make just a little corner with this as our background.
Yeah.
And that's going to be our studio from here on out, because down in the shop, it gets hot down there and it gets real cold, and I have to have the heater on and have a fan going, and that messes with my audio. But if I can find a nice little cozy spot here, just in a little 10x4 spot, it's perfect.
That's when we built our house, we've lived here for about 12 or 13 years now. But when we built our house, I wanted a dining room and I wanted a spare bedroom. That's the two things that I really wanted. But then, your life changes, and then Sam became a podcaster, and this happened. And so now I wanted to leave the bed in there to still have like a spare bedroom. But our friend and Sam and my husband were like, I'm sorry, but the bed has to go. Like, we have to clear. We have 2 dressers in there. And it's like, it just needs to be, I think they're going to put a round table in the middle of the room. And then the background will be like a corner, like you said, like a small corner. But right now it looks like Sam's like at grandma's house instead of a studio. So,
well, maybe that.
So we got to change it. But
that might bring guests a little bit of comfort, knowing that they have that feeling of being in grandma's house. Yeah, you never know. But
that's true.
But anyhow, you said that you guys went to a podcast fest. How did Sam hold up? Like, what did you do to help him make it through being in the crowd and just being surrounded all the time, overstimulating? I imagine there was a lot of that. So what did you do to help him?
Yeah, it was. Sam does really, really well with things like that most of the time. So I can't really think of any times that he, kind of had a meltdown or anything like that. But I know in the past, since he's been speaking a lot and we've been traveling, airports really stress him out. And it was interesting because he's almost 20. So, he's an adult, but I still travel with him. But I noticed, and it took like 2 or 3 times of this happening to know that, oh, okay, like I totally get what's happening now. I would be up at the baggage place, like to check in, to have our bags, be checked in. And I was really busy and I was trying to like get my wallet, my ID, Sam's ID. And Sam would say, hey, Mom, do you think next weekend, like we could go see this movie? And I looked at him and I was like, why are you asking me that right now? Like, look at what I'm doing. Like, this is, and so I just thought, oh my God, he's just not like getting what I'm doing. But then it happened like 3 or 4 times in a row. And I realized he was so overloaded with everything going on at that busy airport. He said it was almost like an escape for him. It was a defense mechanism. Like to him to say, okay, I don't want to think about this anymore. I want to think about this. And so that's where my brain's going to go. And it took me a while to figure out that's what he's doing. But at Podfest, one thing that I realized was, we live in Indiana. We live way out in the country. Sam doesn't drive. So I take him places and sometimes he'll like drive with me. So, that is a part of the independence that Sam doesn't have. So he does have friends, but, it's kind of like us, like we are what he has. And so when he goes to places like this, he's so included in what these people are doing, and he makes friends, and we're there for like 6 days and they go places together, and he's included. And then he comes back home and it's not that he's not included, but it's not that environment anymore.
Right.
And he struggles with that. That last day of Podfest, he was like, I don't even want to go. Because I know I have to say goodbye. I think we should just like go home. And I said, no, we have to go. That's part of Podfest. But he struggles with things like that, like the transition from, oh, yay, this is happening. And then we go home and go back to laundry and all of that stuff. So,
but I think we all struggle with that. If we're being
changes
real.
And transition. I agree. And that's what I told him. I said, I'm sad too. I said, I'm going to have to go. I made a couple of really good friends that I know I'll keep in touch with. And, we almost cried. And I said, that's just part of being human. You just have to go and face it.
Absolutely. And it seems like he's really built his own mechanisms to help himself. So he's like real independent on his emotional care.
Absolutely. He's a huge self-advocate. And that's what I've always tried to instill in him is you have us, but we're not going to be here forever. And you have to be able to advocate for yourself. If something's not working, like in school, I was right there, but there were times where he would have to say, like, I can't focus in this room right now. I've got to go down to the resource room. You have to say that. The teachers cannot read your mind. So you have to advocate for yourself. And he's very good at doing that.
That's awesome. That's definitely something you instilled in him because not a lot of kids can speak up for themselves.
Well, sometimes I want to like put tape over his mouth. Sometimes it's the other way around. Because I'm like, oh my God, he's like a 20-year-old in a 35-year-old body.
That's awesome. When Sam was younger, what is the biggest struggle you had?
Well, I mean, there were lots of hard moments. And I get that question a lot, just, having a child on the spectrum. And a lot of times my response is, I don't know, we dealt with what we dealt with, but I don't think it was a really that different than a typical family that has 1 or 2 kids. And I probably said it before, but I've never met a parent of any type of child that said, well, it was really a breeze to raise those kids. Nobody says that. Like, kids are hard, no matter on or off the spectrum. And that's what I always say is we had our challenges, but I know other families have challenges that we don't have. There were days, and I am not lying, and I do not sugarcoat it. There were days where kind of a typical mom, I would think I could get in that car and I could drive away and I could be done. Mm-hmm. I could totally be done and somebody else can handle this 4-hour meltdown that I know is going to happen. And I don't have to do it. Nobody said that I didn't sign a paper that agreed. I did have those thoughts. And if any mom says that they haven't, they're bullshitting you.
They're
Pardon my language, but they're lying.
Yes.
So there were times it was very, very hard. I would say with Sam, it was the unpredictability. It was not knowing what is going to set him off, what is going to overload him sensory wise. Like, should we make plans to go to the restaurant because he's having a bad day, or should, that was hard. That was really hard. And as he got older, it got better. But when he was younger, I don't think we took him anywhere from the time he was like, I would say 6 to 8, because I didn't know what he would do. And then from the time he was like 10 to 12, 13 was horrendous because he started getting bigger.
Yeah.
And he would have physical, meltdowns to where he would kick things and become, somewhat aggressive. And we taught him and thought through it. So, it's tough though.
Yeah, tough. At least the best you could. So we have twin girls, and we went through, and we still are because they're only 6, but we go through them, one crying and throwing a fit. And then as soon as that one's done, the next one starts. And then it's just like ongoing. It could be 4 or 5 hours of just crying and like not understanding why we're upset. And so like, I totally get the tantrum thing.
Yeah. Right now we are in a very, very important time in their lives at this point, because we have to really tell them the meanings of why they're feeling the way they're feeling, because they don't quite understand the differences in maybe this is why I'm sad and this is what it means, but no, that's not what it means, it's this. Like right now we're dealing with whether you did it on purpose or whether you did it on accident.
Oh my God, that's a thing. Oh, it was an accident, when she like straight up punches her sister in the face. And we're like, that's not an accident. That's not an accident. That's on purpose. And they're like, no, it was an accident, Mom. I'm like, no, it was not.
Did you or did you not purposely rear back and hit your sister?
Choose.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, that was on purpose, and that's not okay.
That goes on for so long, too. I mean, my God, Sam was, I think, he just did it the other day. He's almost 20 years old. He did something. That was not an accident. You thought about that. So
yes, you had to put some thought process into it. Yeah, no, we get that. Like,
yeah,
it's a thing right now, and I'm about to lose my mind with it, because this is one of those moments that I could run away and just not. It's like somebody else can deal with this, because in a sense I kind of feel like I'm failing them, because they're not comprehending maybe like I want them to, and I just don't know what to do. So I guess maybe I feel like I'm failing them, but I could just
or
you're not. I always say
they could be just like their daddy in selective hearing.
If you have ever
selective
if
listening.
You have never felt like a failure as a parent, if you've never felt failure as a parent, then you're not a parent.
That's right.
You have to feel like a failure a few times to really, truly be a parent.
I completely agree with that.
And I always say, like with Sam, it's 100%. And like, again, anybody that says it's not telling the truth. But I know when Sam was diagnosed with autism, I went through that because, I'm an educator and I'm all about, like teaching and, helping kids understand things about the world. That's just where my brain always goes. And I know when Sam was diagnosed and I didn't know a whole lot about it, it was really scary. And I, in my mind, again, thought, what did I do? When I was pregnant with him, he listened to music. I would put phones on my belly, and I read to him from like I think conception. I mean, I took care of myself. I, took all the vitamins, and I was a stay-at-home mom for 3 years. So I was very, very involved with him. And then we get an autism diagnosis. And I just thought, where did it go wrong? And now I know, obviously, it's just brain wiring and nothing went wrong, so anyway, it's just like that typical parent feeling. You always want to do the right thing, but you don't always. And that's part of being human.
Right. I totally get that though. They would cry. They had colic for like 3 months, both of them. And they would just cry all night long. And I would think, oh my God, what did I do to myself? Like, why did I do this? But then they would stop crying and it would be amazing. Yeah. And I knew that I wanted to be a mom, and like they were perfect. But they're just crying. I mean, me and Jenna would be walking around all night long just trying to get these babies to go to bed. And it was just so awful. And now I think, man, it was just a moment. That's all it was.
There was a moment.
Yeah.
There was a moment, and it was actually in the room we're in right now, that I was asleep, standing up, rocking back and forth with one of the girls. I don't remember which one, but I was literally standing up, asleep, and I woke up, and I was like, oh, I should probably lay it down before I fall over.
Yeah, we had a rough moment there, but it didn't last long, because I know some people who have babies that cry for months and months and months, and so we got real lucky, I honestly think. But oh my God, I just think about those moments and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so hard, but it really wasn't. Like, we made it through. They're okay now, but
yeah.
They're big, beautiful girls.
Oh, yeah, they are.
In the whole scope, Sam cried for about 4 months, and he colic, but we at our old house, in our hallway, our carpet was worn down where we walked.
Yes.
My husband, it was funny, when he was first born, my husband worked second shift. And so he would leave around 2:00 in the afternoon and get back at about midnight or 1. And from like 1:00 until my husband left for work, Sam was happy. And then, I'm not kidding you, when that door closed, when my husband left, for hours he would cry. And then people would say, oh, is he a happy baby? Is he good? And my husband would be like, oh, he's great. He never cries. And I'm just like, where do you live? Like, yes, he does. He cries like 12 hours a day.
Yes.
So, yeah, he cried a lot. You still cry, don't you? Just kidding.
Oh, yeah, I seen him sneak into the room behind you. Is he sitting next to you?
And he just gave me a dirty look. So
that's funny. What's going on, Sam? How you doing, dude?
Hey, man, is she behaving for you?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Well, I was trying to watch his back. I guess you took the other side.
She's going to give all your secrets away.
Of course. What, was there secrets you haven't told them?
Probably secrets I don't know, actually.
We'll leave those in the closet.
There you go.
Yes.
What has been the most rewarding or, proud moment you've had?
Well, I mean, there's lots of them, and I'm honored just to be Sam's mom, and just to, a lot of times if you just take the autism out of the equation, which we don't ever want to, because that's, who Sam is. But aside from autism, I'm just proud of him. I'm proud of, the young man he has become. He's got a heart of gold. And then just having autism, I think, has helped him, think his own way. And for him, it's become an ability, which there's been challenges. There's been times where I was like, okay, this is not an ability. This is tough to get through. But I'm just proud of him. I'm proud of how he loves people. I'm proud of how he accepts every human being, no matter what. He's a huge huge advocate for the LGBTQ community. He's a huge advocate for, people on the spectrum being successful, people with disabilities. There's not a person that he's not going to accept, for who they are.
Yeah.
So I believe that. I never pushed that on him, but he's been surrounded by that acceptance and non-judgment. And so I'm not surprised that, he's that open, but I'm just really proud of that. I'm proud of him just accepting people 100% who they are. And there's been moments, when he got his black belt in Taekwondo, that moment when he got through that was incredible. When he stands on stages and speaks, I have to sit behind him, behind the stage, because a lot of times he'll look at me during the speech, but then I also cry.
Yes.
So I sit back behind the stage while he speaks because I'm so incredibly proud. So there's been moments that I could hardly contain myself because I'm so proud of him, but I'm just proud of him. I'm proud of who he has become.
Yes, I could see that though. He is doing amazing things. So I could imagine the amount of proud that you are.
I am. But I will say we are a pretty typical family. When he started the podcast, a few years ago, he just had a story to tell, and it did grow exponentially quickly. And it was very, very overwhelming, and it has become a business. And, Sam, he gets to draw a paycheck now. And that was another time I cried because that was the moment that we'd been working for several years. But there's moments. I mean, there's still moments. It doesn't matter what kind of platform you have or, how many people or how much you travel. It doesn't matter. You still have your days where, Sam and I want to probably go out in the yard and fight because we get on each other's nerves. And
I'll just kick your ass.
Yeah, you think. Yeah.
Remember, he's a big wrestling fan, so he might do some crazy stuff.
He is no match for a pissed off mom. I'm going to say that right now.
Amen.
He is no match for that.
Oh, yeah.
I told him, I said, I don't care how popular you get, because he signed his first autograph a few months ago, and I just sat back and shook my head and told him later, I don't care how many autographs you sign, I will kick your ass. And you know that. And he's like, I'm aware. I'm aware.
Oh, I love it.
It doesn't matter.
Speaking of his wrestling fascination, I did a test on him. I met a friend of his, Abe, on the live Twitter space that we hosted together. And they amazed me with the knowledge that they had, just boom, right there. Because I went back through and I was like, okay, I'm going to test you guys, because I guess there's, within the spectrum, there is a fixation that people with autism, they latch onto, and that's what they love, and they dive into it, and they love it. And so when I was testing these guys, one of them was World Series of baseball. And I was able to go back to the very first one and just randomly go through years. And he was able to tell me everything about it. And then I got to Sam, and he knew everything about WrestleMania. And it just blew my mind how much that I learned just from those guys in that live Twitter space. It was amazing.
That is definitely one behavior of autism, but we have a little bit of a different view on it, I think, and maybe not. Maybe this is things that people think all the time, but part of his mission is for the nonprofit and for really his platform is to kind of turn the fixation word. I'm totally okay with that, because it is a fixation. They are very fixated on knowing that, because that's what they're interested in. That's what they want to know. But the word obsess is kind of thrown around pretty loosely. And I don't know, an obsession has this negative, to me, like a negative connotation to it. So I always say they're practicing for their future skills. And if you're a parent and if you have to listen for 6 hours about WWE, it doesn't seem very fun, like in the moment. And you think, oh my God, this has to stop. But, I've changed my mind because we've met people on the spectrum that when they were growing up, they were fixated. And now they're using that. Now they're using that for their career. And so I think a lot of times we have to stop and think, yeah, it's not appropriate to talk about baseball or dinosaurs or wrestling for 6 hours. That's not appropriate. And you have to teach, kids that I know you want to, but that's not the appropriate thing to do in society. But, you have people like Sam. He has a really good friend, is a NASCAR driver, Armani Williams. And I've talked to Armani's dad before, and his dad said, oh my God, when he was growing up, he had thousands of Matchbox cars, and he would just do that all day. He would play with the cars and he would memorize NASCAR statistics and do this and this. Now he wins NASCAR races. And so that's all he was doing. In my mind is he was prepping, for something bigger that he was going to do. So when Sam started podcasting and he started the media stuff, it resonated with him very quickly and he became fixated on that. But now I realize, we just stepped back and watched. And so I don't know. It is. And it can be a problematic thing to, when things kind of get out of control, especially if it hinders their functioning. If it hinders their functioning in school or surviving on their own, or if they don't want to learn about anything else or like life skills and things like that. But I look at it as just let them go. Let them go as long as they're surviving. And, that's what they're interested in. So, but yeah, very, very common behavior with autism, but like I said, which can turn into really cool things.
Yes.
Yeah, like blowing people's mind when you can just randomly pull out that interesting fact and you're just like, what? What'd you say?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know everything about that. No. Yeah.
Yeah, he
so
does.
What about this? Oh, yeah, I'll tell you all about it. And, man, that conversation, it turned into something else, and it was just enlightening to me just how awesome, people are in general.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're all doing something.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're all trying at least.
I always say we're all disabled. We're all broken.
Absolutely.
I mean, we throw around the word disability too. And I do think that people are disabled. I don't think that should ever be removed from our vocabulary, but if we want to get technical, we're all disabled because we all struggle with something. So I always say Sam isn't any more disabled than I am. I'm probably more disabled than him, actually, because I'm old and have to get a colonoscopy tomorrow. So, and he doesn't. So
yeah, if you tell me that you're a perfect person, I'm going to tell you you're the biggest liar in the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't want to be perfect.
I don't either.
Perfect's boring. I want to be weird.
I know. There's always that one thing that somebody's going to look at you and be like, what?
Yes.
You're weird. And it's like, so are you.
Yeah. There's no such thing as normal.
I celebrate it.
Yeah.
I saw in my classroom, sometimes the kids will be like, oh my God, Mrs. Mitchell, what is wrong with you? And they'll say, I'm weird. And I'm like, I'm going to take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
So don't care.
It's not being weird. It's being unique. Leave me alone.
Yeah. Being you.
Yes. When he was younger and you would be out in public, did you ever feel like people judged you for maybe like the way he was acting, if he was having like an outburst, or just like, did you feel a lot of judgment whenever he was younger, or even now? Did you feel like people were judging you everywhere you went?
Yeah, there were times. Now, I can't think of, it was never problematic, and I can't ever think of like it happened over and over and over again, but it definitely did happen. a lot of times he would have, tantrums. There's a difference between a tantrum and a meltdown. A tantrum is just, they didn't get their way. They're pissed off because they didn't get this and they want this to happen. And a tantrum will subside fairly quickly. Maybe not all the time, but a meltdown is a scientific chemical overload of sensory issues that cannot be controlled. So a tantrum really can't be controlled either with kids, but it's more controllable than a meltdown. But there would be times, I remember one time the alarm in Walmart went off, the fire alarm, and it wasn't loud, but it was intermittent. It was spontaneous. So it would be like, "Brr," and then it'd be like 3 seconds, and he didn't know when it was coming. And so we had the whole grocery, cart full of groceries, and I knew it was coming. And so I left it. And as I left it, people made comments like, "You're just going to leave all that food?" And I just wanted to be like, "Do you want to do this? Do you want to, I know what's coming. You don't know what's coming." So, so things like that happened. And then even 2 or 3 years ago, something happened and I could have been really upset about it, but Sam and I kind of used it as a moment where I could tell them, no, actually, that's not what it is. And so I didn't get really upset, but I have been still to this day, when we go places, if Sam wants to buy something, he has his wallet and he has his money, and that he gets really nervous about that, with paying and change. And maybe that's a lot of young people do, but with Sam, it's a real thing. But I make him do it. And cause I know he can, it just might take longer, but I'm like, you can do this. And so he was paying for something and, change dropped and he was looking at me and he wanted me to rescue him. And I didn't. I was like, no, you gotta figure it out. And a lady came up to me and her intent was not malicious. She wasn't trying to be mean. She was probably almost 75, 80. So she was an older lady. And she said, does he have a brain injury? And I said, at first I just thought, seriously? Why would you ask me that? Even if he did have a brain injury, that is a bold question. And so, but then I said, no, actually he has autism. And then she was very nice. She was like, oh, I don't really know what that is. And then I was able to say, no, this is what it is, And so we kind of turned it into a moment, to a teaching moment,
an educational moment.
She wasn't trying to be mean. It was a legitimate question, but it came off as oh my God, lady, why would you ask me that?
Yeah.
So, there's been times. For the most part, though, I don't know if it happens. Maybe we don't care. I don't know. It's one of those things where it is what it is, and Sam's Sam, and he goes and he's Sam. That's all I ever want him to. So
yes.
So it sounds like you got to educate somebody on it. What are some of the things that are being educated to kids about autism?
What are some things that we could possibly teach our children to help them understand that autism is a thing and that not everybody's going to have the same thought process or be the same as necessarily they have? We want to educate our children. So what are some things that we could do as parents?
Even when Sam had autism or not, I was going to teach him to accept all and to respect, we always told Sam, you respect the janitor in the building as much as you respect the CEO, because that janitor is working really, really hard every day to make sure that facility's clean. And this is just kind of a historical thing because I'm kind of a history buff, but I know when JFK visited NASA one time, he said to a reporter, there was a custodian standing there and somebody said something and he said, he's sending men to the moon. And he pointed at the custodian and no one really got it at first. What he meant was it all starts with what he's doing. He's making this facility look really, really nice whenever people come, from different countries and they look at NASA, this is the first thing that they're going to see. And that always stood out to me because that's true. So we always taught him that. But kids just need to be nice. I mean, I teach them all day, every day, and they are mean. And they're not bad, but I always tell them, you guys need to be nice to each other. And that is such like simplified piece of advice, but it's so true. Like, just be nice. Yes. I mean, and I don't agree with everything everybody says, but I think in our world of like politics and religion and, oh my God, if people would just be nice, it would, I say that in my classroom daily. Daily, I tell my kids, be nice. Be nice. That person that you're being mean to, they're probably fighting a battle that you have no idea what they're fighting, and you're adding to it because you're being mean. And that I think that's the best thing we can say to our kids is, you don't know what they saw this morning. They could be hungry. They could have seen their mom or dad have a huge fight. They could have something traumatic happening in their life, and you're completely expediting everything they're going through. And that's what we always told Sam, and that's what I tell those kids at school. So we always say, be nice. Yes. That's the best thing we can say to our kids, I think.
So I've been subbing this past year, and I totally get the whole being nice thing. Like, having to make these kids understand that maybe the person they're being mean to struggle isn't the same as theirs. And just to be nice to each other, because they are really mean. Yeah. Really mean. Like, I was surprised.
Well, and then 99.99999% of bullies have a problem themselves. Yeah. It's like, look, dude, you got your own problems. Oh, yeah. Go deal with them. Leave me alone.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly. And that took me so long. I was bullied for my weight whenever I was in school pretty relentlessly. And I was probably in my mid-30s before I realized, oh my God, there really wasn't anything wrong with me. It was them. It took me a long time. But after we educate the kids on being nice, then we need to bring in their parents. And we need to bring in adults. And we need to talk about being nice. Yeah. Because that's where it originates from. They see their parents acting like fools, and then you do what you see. So, I also tell the kids, this is another thing I think we should say to kids is, as an adult, it's a little different. I just told this to Sam yesterday with 8th graders and middle school kids. I tell them, you are who you hang out with. You are your company. Whenever now adults, I feel like it's a little bit different because, we reason better and we can hang out with somebody who maybe is like bad news, but maybe we don't do what they do, or it's different when you're an adult. But with kids, they're so influential. And I always tell them, last year we had a kid, and he came from a good family. His parents expected him to get good grades. He really wanted to get good grades, but then he started hanging around with these kind of knuckleheads. And I love the knuckleheads. I mean, I love them, like they're my own, but he started getting in trouble. And I pulled him aside one day and I said, you are who you're hanging around with. Mm-hmm. That's why this is happening. You need to choose wisely. And I'm not saying that you choose perfect friends, because some of your best friends are the people that need help. I mean, that's just the way life is, but choose wisely. That's what I always tell them. And that's what we should be telling our kids is make good choices when it comes to things like that.
Absolutely.
Over the last couple of months since we've talked last, what has been the most enlightening moment that you've come across?
Maybe some at Podfest.
Oh, I know something. This was incredible. This was like life-changing that just happened to us. We were at Podfest, and, I manned the booth a lot because we've set up a little booth with Sam Services, and things like that. And Sam kind of was off doing the networking and speaking, and I, did that a lot. And lots of different people came. We had parents come up, we had entrepreneurs, we had teachers, business owners. I mean, I talked to just a variety of people. But one parent, he was a podcaster, and he walked up to the booth and he was very curious. And I said, yeah, we're Autism Rocks and Rolls Corporation. And I said a couple things. And then he said, well, my son was just diagnosed with autism and he's 8 years old. And that's all he got out. And he started sobbing. Like, it was kind of an uncomfortable moment, because I was like, oh, I don't see grown men cry all the time. But I felt so bad for him in that moment. And I patted him on the back and I just said, but it can be a beautiful, beautiful journey. Like, it can be, and it should be, and he kind of looked at me and he said, but I don't know if he'll ever live on his own. I don't know if he'll ever drive or get married or have children. And I looked at him and I said, but why are you defining success as that? Like, why are you only focusing in on what he's supposed to do? And so he kind of stopped and looked at me, and I said, my son doesn't drive. I said, he may have to live in town and use public transportation, but that's okay. Like, that's totally fine. There's many, many ways that you can be successful. And, it was just a beautiful conversation, because by the end, I don't think it's like his mind changed or anything, but he understood, like, my son was there standing on a stage talking to other people about his experiences, and he doesn't drive. And it's not really hindering him right now. I mean, he wants to, and it will help him be more independent, but we'll work on that. And in the meantime, he can be successful. And so that moment just kind of changed me, and it kind of solidified why we're doing what we're doing, because I want so badly for other parents to know that, to know, yes, you've got this diagnosis. I don't care if it's high on the spectrum, low on the spectrum. Our lives are beautiful, and our life is hard. You know what? But so's yours, and so's everybody else's. So it's a beautiful journey, and that's what I wanted him to walk away with. And I hope that he did. And I hope he goes home and he looks at his son a little differently. And then I said, what does his son do? Or I was like, what does your son do? What does he like to do? And he was like, oh, he loves YouTube and he loves that microphone. And I said, he needs to be a YouTuber right now.
Yes.
And he was like, but he's only 8. It doesn't matter. Put him in front of that microphone. Give him that outlet that he probably so desperately wants. And so it was life-changing for me.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah, these last 2 episodes have been pretty heavy here at the end.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful thing. And just to be able to let him understand from a mommy's point of view and that you went through it, and it's just that you could be there for him in that moment, and that's awesome.
It was like a 20-minute conversation, but it was one of those where I told him, I was like, you are talking to somebody that totally understands. Like, I was right there, like some of the darkest days of my life, and I was right where he was at that moment, and I understood. And, it was just one of those moments. Like I said, this is why we do what we do right
yes.
there. Like it was just confirmation. So,
well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for taking your time and talking with us and educating us a little bit more on autism and what it is to be a mommy of autism.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me do that. We, I said it's Sam's mission. It has become mine. So that's what we do. And, hopefully I might joke and say, Sam got put on payroll. Now mama needs to get put on payroll. So I can focus more on that. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing. But thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Where can everybody find y'all on social media?
So we're everywhere. We are on, let's see, Facebook. If you Google or if you put on Facebook, Sam Stories, we're kind of revamping that right now. We're kind of making that more of we're going to like moderate it and things like that. We're trying to build the YouTube channel. It's still pretty small, but we're working on that. He's on Twitter. He's on Instagram. And then as far as the platforms, his podcast is on all platforms. So, you can go to any of those. And then we have a website, autismrocksandrolls.com, and it's kind of in the construction area as well. But everything that you want to know about Sam is on there. His services with podcast editing, his the way that the nonprofit runs, and the only reason it can run is revenue through Sam speaking engagements. And so, that's one thing we always say, schools, conferences, workplaces, employers that might want to learn more about hiring someone on the spectrum, we can totally help with that. And then his email, our email is info@autismrocksandrolls.com.
Okay.
Trying to think of what he has coming up.
Are y'all still planning on going down to Dallas?
No.
That fell through. We didn't get accepted.
No. We wrote I know I was so bummed out. We wrote, like a call for speakers, and he didn't get accepted this year for that. So we hope to travel to Maryland in August.
Hopefully.
We have a big event coming up locally at a pumpkin patch and that's going to be really cool. The whole theme is going to be autism. And then he has a speaking engagement in Indianapolis in September.
And the virtual summit.
And then he's involved with the virtual summit in September as well. So August. Is it August?
Yeah.
Okay. We have quite a bit coming up. But yeah, and then the biggest thing is our books. Like I said, we're working pretty hard on those books. When he speaks at conferences, it would be nice to have something in hand, so people could have, and we wanted to do it for a long time. So we're right in the thick of that. So that's what we have coming up, I guess.
That's pretty awesome.
So you'll be pretty busy then.
Yeah. I know how busy authors are.
Yeah, I've talked to a few of them.
Yeah, we know for sure. Well, that's all the time we have for today. You can find us on Facebook, The Blue Collar Enlightenment Show, and at the BCE Show on Twitter. Give us a follow, and remember to message us about what you think about the podcast. It means a great deal to us. Thanks for listening.
Bye.